This meeting is being recorded.
So for today's presentation, I'm happy to introduce, Rosemary Lones, founder and CEO of Helping Nature Heal Incorporated, a leading-edge ecological landscape and gardening company that works in Atlantic Canada. Rosemary will be speaking about two municipal projects, one in Nova Scotia and one in New Brunswick, both of which received Sol's Greener Green Space recognition in 2021. As the host of today's session, I will moderate questions, but if anybody following the presentation, which will be about 25 or so minutes, and if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat, or we can also ask you to unmute yourself and you can ask the question that way. So finally, what I'd like to mention is that Sol's webinar series and our programs are made possible by the generous and ongoing support of Gaia College, Canada's leading college for courses in organic land care. So over to you, Rosemary.
Thank you, Christine. What a great opportunity. I'm so grateful for this chance to speak about some of our projects that are really interesting and really dynamic and still looking so beautiful and healthy and thriving, as you can see from this lovely picture that Raylene has on the screen here. So we're going to talk about two projects today. This one that you see here on the screen is in Petite Riviere, just on the south shore of Nova Scotia. It's about 20 minutes south of Bridgewater, about an hour and a half south of Halifax, just to give you a little bit of context there. And Raylene will go ahead and jump to the first slide. So this is a little bit about our company. I won't stay here too long. If people want to have the slideshow, of course, it'll be available through the Sol website, so you can read a little bit of that. But I think just two kind of important things is that we've been recognized by Coastal Zone Canada for in 2014 receiving their award, which is a specialty award concerning coastal management and erosion in the Maritime specifically, but Canada worldwide. And also the Nature Inspiration Awards out of Ottawa at the Canadian Museum of Natural History. And it's been very humbling, and we feel very honored to receive these awards, and we're so grateful, as I mentioned, to your organization and to the others who recognize the challenges that we're up against as far as climate change, but also that we're doing, putting our best foot forward and walking the talk, as we say. So thanks for that. And of course, if you have any other questions about what we've been up to, feel free to send me some questions. So this Petite Riviere Park site, it looks pretty desolate right here in its initial stages. This is along the river of the Petite Riviere, and so the site was contaminated. It still is contaminated, I should say. There was a fire on it, and it turned out that that was the 7th fire in the last 100 years. So the site itself, the land, heavily compacted, and then of course grossly mismanaged and misused by 100 years worth of fertilizer stores, gas stations, warehouses. In its final state, it was a yacht building corporation. And of course, chemicals in that industry exploded and set the place afire. So very hard compacted. If we hit the next slide, Raylene, I think we can look at. So it's less than an acre. And of course, the ocean is just a, spit and hop away. So we were very concerned about the toxicity of the land. We had an engineer brought in. So that was our first collaboration, was to see exactly what was in the ground and how to manage it. And so we had an engineering firm at the time. It was called Strum Engineering from Halifax, and they did the work for us. They engineered and designed a clay cap scenario, and we were able to, along with the other partners, fundraise, apply for grants, and then also ultimately get some money out of the municipality as well to make this park into a reality. The locals were very involved. It took about 5 years from the day of the fire to the end result, the grand opening. It was a long process of, you know, when you're working with the public, people wanted their say, they wanted their turn to say what they felt should happen here. And so making room for all of that discussion and allowance for people to argue a little bit and be feisty and really stand up for the beliefs that they have was really important. So our process, but our position was to be big ears and small mouths and listen well and make sure that people felt heard. They wanted a place that wouldn't burn down again. You know, they didn't want infrastructure. They didn't want plastic play equipment or swings or things like that. They wanted nature, and they wanted it to reconnect them to the waterway that they so loved and had been, you know, held back by because there was all this industry in the way for a number of years. So it was really a really great experience for us to be able to sit back and listen and then create a plan that blended all of those hopes and dreams and wishes together. It was quite something. It took us at least a year to get through the design process once we came to some consensus around what they actually wanted. And then, of course, we had to go through the bidding process with other landscapers competing for the interest of doing this project. We'll go to the next slide because this one is kind of boring. This is what it looks like now. And this is a closer up version. I think there's another picture that looks the other direction, but this, you can kind of see this plateau of grass. It's a mixed species lawn. It has a lot of clovers, oats, rye, like I think there was 10 different varieties of ground cover that went into this lawn, and I put that in air quotes. It's a low maintenance, needs to be mowed about once a month. And you can see the path that is between the lawn and that taller vegetation. They wanted, there's also a break in the vegetation so people could get to the general store. The general store is quite famous in the area. People go for ice cream, you know, they fill up with gas, they're getting their NSLC, they're getting groceries and things on the way to the cottage. So this is, you know, in the heart of Green Bay, Crescent Beach, Rissers Park, all of these camping and cottagey kind of spaces. So this is a real hub of busyness. And they wanted people to be able to kind of sit down and take a breath. You know, you spend all your time getting to this place and just take a breath before you make the final journey to your camp or your cottage. And so grab an ice cream, grab some groceries, sit in the park and relax for a minute, and then take your time getting to your space. So it's a very social and very fundamental space for the community. The pathway is accessible for wheelchairs, and it surrounds the perimeter and then enters into the park in a couple areas. It also leads to the kayak and no motorized boat launch that's attached to this living shoreline. And this berm is native species primarily, but we left room for the local gardeners to divide out their own cottage gardens and offer up some free plants to the project. So it really engaged and create stewardship for the project as a whole. So we have things like rugosa roses, which we know are not the favorite for some folks, but they're very indicative of the South Shore. We have a sample of every tree that is indicative to the Acadian forest system. So we have birch and maple and oak and poplar for our hardwoods, and then all of our evergreens, black, white, and red spruce, pine, fir, and hemlock. And then the native shrubs, as well as we opened up the plant palette, so to speak, to the heritage varieties as well. Those loved plants that people come to the cottage for. the Siberian iris, the peonies, the flowering dogwood trees, the Cotonia aster, daffodil bulbs in the spring, tulips and things like that. So although we really high graded to the native plant list, we allowed for this heritage variety to come in as well, because they're such part of the community, and it gave people the opportunity to dig in their own gardens and come over by wheelbarrow or the back of the pickup truck and offer up some plants. It really engaged everyone from the community. We had local nurseries and the winery and some of the other the municipality and some of the bigger organizations donate time and money and plants as well. It was really a beautiful display of collaboration for sure. So we'll hit the next slide. Yeah. So we have signage, of course, and these berms where these plants are planted sit above the clay cap. So the clay cap was designed to be 6 inches thick, a very specific clay, and to a very specific density. And so we, navigated all of that challenge, and we still had people that were concerned that the edible plants may have ingested some of those toxic effluent. They weren't 100% trusting of the clay cap, so to speak. So we doubled the density and the thickness of the clay. And then we did a double layer of geotextile, the very heavy felted fabric, over top of the entire clay cap. So we feel very secure that no root systems will be making their way through those layers, and therefore not being able to ingest any of those toxics. So if people want to eat the blueberries and the wild strawberry and the plums and things that are growing there, then they can feel safe for that, which meant that we needed berms because we couldn't dig holes, right? Because the clay cap essentially seals off the land. Of course, all of the testing wells and everything were filled with bentonite clay. And then we did the 12 inches of clay cap and then the layers of geotextile on top. So then we laid out 3 and 4 foot tall berms surrounding the perimeter. And so that we had enough soil system of volume to be able to support the needs of those plants. So that was really, really important. And so when we created this solid land and then put berms up top, of course, we would have drainage issues. So we designed an underground swale system that takes care of all the water and the runoff. So we're not just creating a big old pool in the middle of those berms. And then so coarse woody debris, of course, we had lots of driftwood since we're a seaside community, driftwood and some lobster traps and some buoys and things to kind of decorate it up. But also the coarse woody debris, of course, as it decomposes, generates the mycelium, which we need to keep all those roots happy and connected to the soil horizon. So that fungal layer is very important, sitting on top of that really sterile space. So of course there's a bridge and a highway, and you can see from this kind of more bird's eye view looking down into the landscape, there is a platform there. The community is very musically inclined, so they do a lot of fundraisers and bands and all kinds of events. People get married in this park. And so you can kind of see on the right-hand side there's a tree line that helps to kind of mask the road noise. That there's a bridge there, of course, going over top of the river. On the left-hand side, we have birch and maple trees and a variety of shrubs, which are similar to those that are running along the length of the riverbank. And then this Cotonia aster that's right at the base of this photograph is actually an elevated berm, so that we have amphitheater style seating so that everyone gets to have a look down at that performance space. So the the platform is on horizontal land, and then we built the berm back up about 3 feet high. And surrounding kind of like a semicircle, so that when we have bands and we have weddings and things, everyone gets a really good view. And then just behind this land is horizontal space with drainage swales and things that are buried underground. And you can see there's colorful chairs and people, picnic tables and things, and it's become a very interesting passive park, and we're so delighted that people are getting to use it. All right, let's go to the next one. This is a glimpse of the living shoreline. You can see we have Spartina grasses right down to the water's edge. This is low tide. You can see there's a little bit of room there and boulders that are exposed. When we have high tide, of course, the water goes right up into those grasslands. The grasses are very important to hold that living edge together, where we have tidal range here of about 4 feet. The water's coming and going, and we do have some boat traffic, so there's a bit of wake disturbance there too. There is a break in this grassy hedge to allow for the non-motorized boats to come in. So people with kayaks and paddle boards and tubes and all kinds of things come and deploy or exit the water from this place as well, which makes it really fun and interactive with the community. And you can see the bank of birch trees in the background there. So we've taken these birch trees and then moved them up into the display as well, so that people, when you're in the park, you feel like it's always been there, which is kind of the point, and really nice to see a nice park like that. All right, let's go to the next slide and see what that one's about. So this is a sort of an interior shot. Raylene gratefully stopped by recently to get some nice blooming pictures. And so you can see there's a great variety of different plants between the native and the heritage. So biodiversity is really high here. We often have people commenting about the birds and butterflies. Of course, bees are around, but squirrels and skunks and raccoons and things often come and go. No one has made home yet, but really nice to see all the critter activity. We want the poop loop to be excited and to be invigorated by our visitors. So it's really nice when the animals, you know, one of my mentors said, when the animals move back in, you know, you've done a good job with your restoration project, because they wouldn't stay if they didn't have all the things they need. So knowing that we've created this space for them is really lovely. I guess the point about the accessibility here is that we did a compacted Class A, brown Class A. It's made out of a chipped granite, and then so we compacted that, and then we put a more ornamental pea gravel on top and compacted it again, so that we have a really soft surface, but it's sturdy enough to withstand the impact of all of our visitors. And it looks nice, and it allows for drainage and doesn't hurt the feet. You can walk in there in bare feet and hang out in the park. So we're very, you know, felt it was really important to meet the needs of all of our residents, and young and old, able and challenged the like, and make sure that everyone gets to have a little piece of nature. Yeah, so that's it about there. Oh yes, and we had a shed donated by the local community college. The Heritage Carpentry program built us this hedge, and so you can see it's almost being overtaken by the plants now, which is really nice. And there's that beautiful flowering dogwood that was donated by Village Nursery, just a bit down the shore from this park. And you can see some of the what quote unquote ditch lilies and potentilla shrubs and some more Cotonia aster. And then that lawn that we were talking about, we had some benches purchased by a local carpenter, so that was nice. And you can't see the road anymore, which is lovely. They've since put up the super mailboxes for the community and eliminated the door-to-door mail system. So it's nice to have a little privacy that you can hang out there, read your mail, and do what you need to do. And I think it's really important to identify that the local gardeners are the ones who are maintaining the landscape. We took care of it for the first year with feedings of our organic seaweed fertilizer that we make. And, we weeded pathways and clipped back shrubs and things to make sure that the growth rate of everything was being appropriate. And then the community has really taken over its care. So I'm quite delighted to see how lovely it looks and how, presentable and everything is looking like it's supposed to be. So that's really nice. And another really great view there of the benches and picnic tables and things that are well used in this space for sure. All right, so I guess the main thing to think about on this one is the collaboration. So Covey Island Boat Works was the former owner of the land. It took us a little bit of elbow grease to convince them to donate the land back to the municipality, and then have the municipality of the district of Lunenburg take ownership of the land and provide for garbage and porta potties and liability insurance. And then of course, Petite Riviere Winery, which is 10 minutes up the road, donated some cash as well as some in kind of labor and some plants and things as well. So thanks to all the partners. And it took our crew 12 days to build this park from the start when we first did the first bentonite clay into the first well until we were completely finished, everything planted, and we could walk away. So it was a fairly significant project for 12 straight days of work for our team, and can't thank them enough. Blood, sweat, and tears, as well as local schools came by, the community college, the Petite Riviere School, kids from kindergarten to grade 6 came. And so it was truly a community project, which was really nice. So I think that's it for this one, and we'll just take a few minutes. I see we're at 4:23. This is the Kokan Marina Park, which is our second award for this year. And you can see it's a rock wall facing the water, which is the marina, of course, and a small strip garden that they had created a meadow for monarch butterflies with sort of a milkweed meadow. And then looking to the top of this slide, you can just barely see 3 kind of lonely trees standing by themselves. And on the far right-hand side is a ditch that takes water from all the parking areas and drains it back into the waterway. And so it was kind of skanky and dirty and compacted and not a very friendly or inviting space. And you can see on the far top right-hand corner, there's sort of that white color. That is what we call the plastic park with all the gym equipment and that kind of thing over there. So delighted to be given another chunk of land that we could play with. And if you go to the next slide, Raylene, I think it shows the design concept ideas. Yeah, so you can see the rock wall on the right-hand side. We had meadow, we envisioned wood chip trails and log benches and those 3 lonely trees being surrounded by their community and their partners in life. And then you can see where that drain with the arrows was just so straight and kind of boring. And then maybe we can flip to the next picture and have a look at what it turned out to be. So big difference. We activated this space in a couple days. I think we were there for 3 days in total to build this park. We had a seminar in the morning of day 1 and maybe around 50 volunteers. And then day 2, we had some volunteers come back and some local organizations that chipped in, and then finished that up and headed on our way. So as we developed the site, you can see that on the left-hand side, we took that dirty old ditch and turned it into a rain garden. So we made it a bit more curvy. We dug it out, made some deep holes where we could trap water. We filled it with pea gravel so that it wasn't a drowning hazard, since we know we have all these little children playing right next door. And you might be able to see just below the award symbol there, we cut some log coins and embedded them in the lawn so that we would invite the children into this new space very sort of subtly and gently. And the coins go through the riparian zone, through the rain garden. So they step and tiptoe through the tulips there to get to the other side, which is the wood chip trail that surrounds the property. And you can kind of see from this picture as well, the elevated berms have been mulched, so they're a slightly different color than the other horizontal areas. And our 3 lonely trees, we've added a shrub and tree layer around them. And of course, accessible space in the middle with some stump seating for kids and families to hang out in. And I understand there's a picnic table in there now. And the meadow that had been started by the garden club, we respected and maintained, added a few more plants and a bit more diversity to it. And then we planted in the virgin land as well as in these elevated berms. So our idea was to control the flow of water, help it absorb and soften up this infilled, compacted landscape, and re-engage with the seed bank that is buried underneath there. This land used to be a marsh, and of course it was infilled when they put the marina together. And so, you know, we have faith that those plants are still there underneath all that infill, and they will find their way up through this surface and come back to life here. We'll hit the next slide, Raylene, because I think we look at some of the spaces in particular. Yeah. So we borrowed this idea of the wattle fence from the old English gardens, and we use it in a couple different ways. In this location, we used it to stop people from walking from the gravel area that is uphill down through the landscape. So it's sort of a true fence in this way, but it also becomes a growing medium and a place where vines could grow. And of course, they can't kind of mow too close to it because it's 3-dimensional. So we get the naturalized grasses and grains and perennials growing up in and amongst it. So it becomes part of the habitat as well. But primarily in this case, it's about human control and where we don't want people to walk. Okay, we'll go to the next station, Raylene. Okay, and this is looking from the other direction. We have a brush wall, which is great habitat for snakes and amphibians and squirrels and all kinds of critters. So this is a quite dense, and it's woven together. So it's not just a pile of brush, but it's actually a designed and tactical feature. It's about 3 feet high and about 4 feet wide. And it has logs in the base of it, and then all this brush woven very tightly against it. We call it strategic composting. We know the logs in the body of it will slowly decompose. The brush will quickly decompose, and we'll add materials to it year on year to keep it healthy and alive. It's very similar to perhaps a hugelkultur, like a base of a hugelkultur bed, but we didn't add the soil on top. So this again gets little trees planted here and there. It has grapes growing on it. We've mulched on either sides as well so that it becomes habitat for critters and things. Of course, the more aggressive plants will make their way up through all of that. And it really becomes a special place. It's also a utility place that when people are, you know, pruning or weeding or doing any kind of activities, they have somewhere to put all their digestible, compostable matter. So they put it into the brush wall. So that's really lovely. And I think that's all I want to say about that one. I guess the point I missed too is that both the wattle fence and the brush wall help to slow the flow of water. So we often pay attention to the Buddhist principles, and the main one being slow the water. And so we really want to hang on to the water in the land, let the land digest it, let the toxicity or the effluent that might be in it, get into the soil, let the earth take care of that, and then gently weep away and drain through. This is a close-up of the rain garden. You can see those coins I was talking about. They're kind of off-center. They're kind of whimsical and interesting, and surrounded by the pea gravel. There's definitely water in there frequently, but not standing water in puddles, so that we don't have that drowning risk or any slippery issues. And we planted right in the pea gravel. Of course, we opened that up and dug holes and then closed the pea so that it is 2-inch pea gravel as well. So it's quite clustered and large, and acts like a mulch for these plants that like being in the waterway. You can see there's 4 raised beds on either side with mulch over top that were also planted up heavily. So this is a really inviting, kind of interesting way to get people to walk through a system that is primarily a utility, but it has this lovely feature that we can kind of pay attention to a new group of plants that we might not be that noticing. People aren't often excited about looking in the ditch and seeing what kind of plants live there. So this is a new way of seeing something with a new set of eyes, which is really fun. And so, yeah, it's water loving plants. It sifts any coarse debris like garbages and things before it gets to the outflow end. And of course, at the outflow, we have hay bales with a wattle fence around, with willows and red osier dogwood. So again, trapping any bags or anything, water bottles or anything that might find their way into the water course, and really sifts all that sediment. So we're getting true water going back into the water system rather than all that sediment and garbage that was flowing through the parking areas in the past. All right, we'll go to the next one. Thank you. So again, berms are often hard to really visualize in a 2-dimensional kind of form here, but they are 3-dimensional. They're typically knee height or a little bit higher. We did get some free soil from the local community garden that had a lot of sods in it. So we've, flipped those green side up and created some edges around the back side, gotten some elevation there. And this spring, the community group went in and added a whole bunch more plants. And of course, the woody debris is meant to re-engage with the soil food web and really start that mycelium layer generating again, so that we get really high impact for the plants. And that means that they don't really need us anymore. They're getting food from the soil and from the decomposition of the mulches and the framing of these spaces. So, really it's quite self-sufficient and really needs sort of minimal care, which in a public park is really important, that we don't overtax our collaborators in that way, right? Doing maintenance, extra maintenance. All right, so we can go to the next slide. Excellent. So this is showing our accessibility area. So again, compacted Class A. This is more of the blue Class A, they call it. So it's more similar to, say, Department of Highways or parking lot gravel, which attaches to that similar style of gravel in the parking lot just adjacent to this side. So we have the wood chip walking trail that is quite easy with moms and strollers or people with canes, but for a really solid footing, for wheelchairs or for walkers, we really needed that compacted Class A. I'm not typically wanting to have too many hardened surfaces in a park setting, but of course, when it's a utility like this and it's inviting to get more people into the park, so of course we wanted to do that. And you see that it's elevated about a foot off the ground. So again, we used those the sods that would have just been kind of tossed into the compost pile as edging material. Of course, they regrow and create this naturalized edge, and then flanked with berms on all four sides so that we can have some pollinators and shrubs and things. Eventually there'll be some shade in there as well, so it won't be such a heat sink. And the seeding with okay, this is a good point. The local supply chain for both projects, for all of our projects, we keep the 100-mile diet ethic and the conservation ethic, where we are only taking sort of 10% of any one population or community of plants when we're doing natural digging. So where the school was having a new building put in, we took all of the scrub that they cleaned off and the soils from that project and had it trucked over here. So we didn't have to harm another piece of land in order to make this land. So that was really nice to have the local supplies within, I think it was within 5-mile range. And we engaged with other landscapers. Of course, this is in New Brunswick, so we don't have a home base here. So we really had to rely on collaboration with our partners and our colleagues in the landscaping world to supply materials for us, a little bit of labor, as well as some ingenuity and know-how. So we had, the local mill cut these stumps and logs for us. The wood chips came from a local supplier at that same mill, soils and mulches from, really within a small radius. And of course, the collaboration of the NGOs, the town, the mayor, some of the councilors were there. We had some representatives from the First Nations community as well come by and participate, bring some plants, do some things, do some special planting and talking with us about the importance of regenerating this natural space that had been ruined by, the creation of this marina. So really important that we collaborate not only with others in our industry, but with the other organizations and groups who, call this place home. So getting their perspective in the design process, as well as in the planning and the layout of the final product, was really important for us to do that as well. Okay, let's have another scoot here. So this is the rock wall. We do what we call a vegetated rock wall system. And so when there's lots of random rocks like that, where they've kind of dumped them and sort of placed them a little bit, we have put burlap coffee bags into those larger gaps, filled those with soil, and then planted inside the bags. Those plants will live inside the bag for a time, and then their roots will find their way back into that land that we're softening up by this process. We use things like the Spartina grasses, the marums, the dune grasses, willows, red osier dogwood, roses. Here we tried to stick closely to the native plant list from this region. This is sort of southeast New Brunswick, so still in the Acadian forest region, but a slightly different plant community. So we, took our cues from the local organizations about those types of plants and really tried to high grade to those specifically. These plants, of course, within the rock wall make the rock wall stronger. They knit together all the drainage rock that's in behind that big coarse material and really allow for a slow movement of water rather than gushing over the top, so that we're trapping sediment, creating habitat, and really activating the space with life. Birds, bees, and butterflies, of course, and humans are now engaged in this space instead of it just being a ruined kind of bruise on the life force of this land in general. was really important for us to bring back the habitat for all the critters, including the ones who migrate from the water to the dry land, like turtles and birds that really need both spaces in order to raise their young and, keep their juvenile partners safe from predators and whatnot. So yeah, this was a very, very important project from environmental standpoint, but also from the social context as well. And of course, they received funding too for this project as well. So it was really important to, make sure that all of the funders had an opportunity to participate as well. So let's see what else is on this slide that I haven't already mentioned. I think I've hit all these components. As the plants naturalize, of course, they will set seed. Those seeds will blow around and get trapped in the crevices. We've engaged this organization to keep stuffing hay and leaf litter and biomass in between those boulders so that over time we can create a soil system so that free plants, those seeds and those seedlings and those little rootlings will find their way throughout that wall. And in a very short order, it'll be all greened up and it won't be so industrial kind of looking for the marina folks as well. All right. And this was, this is a great picture of the beginning day. Of course, this is during COVID time, so everyone's trying to stay spaced out or with their partners and things. And I think we've filled the time. So if you have some questions, I'd love to participate in that part as well.
Well, thank you so much. And I invite anybody on this call to either put your question in the chat or unmute yourself and ask that way. But I just want to say I'm just so thrilled that you've given so much attention to the way that you've worked in partnership with the local communities and the stakeholders that are involved. And it just shows how much you can sort of be sensitive to the needs of those communities and work through those, as you say, and a feisty engagement perhaps, but just how that increases the ownership or the stewardship following that. So yeah, that's very important information, and I think that probably resonates with a lot of people, or good learning too coming from that.
Yeah, it was so fun, especially the Petite Riviere project, because there were so many stakeholders. We had hundreds of people at our meetings, and it was, strong-minded folks that really wanted something, and likewise other strong-minded people, and you could have the little discussions and the feisty parts, and in the end, everybody came away with smiles because they all knew that we were listening as the designers and that we were engaging them to bring more to the table because we really wanted to make sure we got it right. And the way that the people of both of these parks, the land around them, people are still coming from far away to visit and to participate and be real stewards of these spaces. So it was really wonderful to see that all kind of come together and how that all got kind of managed on the fly at the time.
Well, and as you say, like even the feedback that you got, no more plastic playgrounds for kids that are so common these days. And they said, we would like a connection to nature. We value this public space. It's a public common area, and then access even to the water. So all of that is just a telling sign that we just seem to be more disconnected, and there's an urge or yearning to be connected back again. So do you find that your work is having an influence on these small municipalities and how they want to approach any of their future development of their lands?
Definitely. We're seeing the impact right away. This spring, the town of Bucktouche has engaged us with their water treatment facility and the worry of erosion and storm surge. And, it's a community walking path that goes through that space. And so people want to be engaged. They want to be around nature, not all the mowing and all the hardened surfaces. So even the utility of, a water treatment plant with a walking path in front of it, it's the town of Stratford as well engaged us last year with a public park as well. Same kind of thing, they decommissioned a water treatment plant that was on the shoreline and turned it into a park. And so invited us in to work on that living shoreline part, the erosion part of it. And now, you know, more and more will come to that place, because I think people are finally kind of speaking up for nature. And now that climate change is in our, you know, in our minds every day, it's not this mystery anymore. We're seeing it happening in our own backyard, not just on the news in some foreign country where there's a mudslide or something, you know, like it's really impacting us on a daily. And our children are looking up to us and saying, you got to do something about this. You know, I have a future here that I want to live. And when the children speak, right, it's hard to say no to that. So I really believe that the local non-government organizations who are sort of at the pulse, the heartbeat of the communities, are really bringing the issues to the forefront and applying for grants, demanding funding, asking their, you know, local government representatives to be more responsible for our future, because, you know, Mother Nature's not making any more land, and it's washing away at a rapid rate in these coastal communities, especially. So, you know, these principles of sustainability, the social, economic, and environmental, all have to blend and mesh together. And sometimes the social is bigger than the economy part, but you figure out a way to make it work, you know. And I think innovation, creativity is, you know, the calling cards of this era, to look at these challenges with a new lens and see how can we actually achieve the goals of our future, you know, residents, and what are they going to want and need out of these places, and make them available today too, right? Not to wait for 10 years to make something happen. Get boots on the ground as fast as you can.
Well, and when you say that, it reminds me of what you were saying about your principle of the 100-mile diet, just having local resources. And that does take innovation and takes creativity to sort of understand what resources are available and then how to make the best use of them on site. And
Right.
yeah, so that's another principle that Green and Green Spaces was hoping to see. And that's a very good example of how you did show the different approaches that you used. Well, that was fantastic. I think you provided lots of very useful information, and we have reached the end of the time. So for everyone, thank you for coming. But this website, or this webinar, will be on Soul's website, and also we have a YouTube channel. So we will be sending out this link to participants today and registrants. And also it's a resource that we hope you go back to regularly on Soul's website. So please join us again next week. And I want to again thank you very much for presenting today. It was really interesting to hear.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm certainly happy to do so. And thank you for the opportunity to share. We're, you know, we're a three-pronged business, and part of that, one of those prongs is education. And so we'll always take you up on the offer to share some of our skill and knowledge. And hopefully we can meet in person someday and do a project together. That'd be really great.
Okay, well, that's great. We hope that, yeah, we did this series so that we could make all these connections and networks. And then we hope that maybe there'll be future contacts from people who've been listening today or find this webinar on our website that will contact you and maybe be part of your next project.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody, for coming today. Take care.
All right. Bye now.